There are thousands of tragic stories born out of Tuesday's attack, but there are also a few rare stories that can make you believe in miracles. Dateline NBC's Edie Magnus has one of those stories.
It was an island of hope in a sea of chaos. NYU Downtown Medical Center, the hospital closest to the World Trade Center. Keeping order amid the madness, Dr. Howard Beaton, Chief of Surgery and Emergency Services.
This is in every way comparable to a war zone and to a battlefield.
That first night, a Dateline producer followed Dr. Beaton with a small digital camera as he went from bed to bed in the intensive care unit.
This is the place, though, where life hangs in the balance.
That's correct.
One of the first victims brought in, minutes after the attack, was a young woman who appeared to be in her late 20s.
This was originally Jane Doe number 1. This was a woman who was injured from when the first plane struck.
In the ER, Dr. Jerry Ginsburg, a plastic surgeon, found Jane Doe number 1 hanging on to life by a thread.
Put intravenous fluids in her and essentially took this lady who was absolutely bleeding to death, stabilized her so that I could then bring her to the operating room. And again, the team would be, her legs were almost cut off.
Cut off apparently by debris falling to the street.
We have been told that what hit her was the landing gear of the plane. If it had been a few inches further forward, it would have hit her in the head and she would have never made it here.
The trauma team operating on Jane Doe had few options and even less time. Her legs, they concluded, should be amputated, and fast.
And one of our superb surgeons came in, well-trained in trauma, and he looked at the team, the 4 of us working, and he said, in his Australian accent, "For God's sakes, cut him off, we've got to get going." And that was actually superb trauma training. You don't waste time on things that are non-reconstructible. You save the blood, you get the job done.
But one surgical team member, a foot specialist, begged for more time before going through with the amputation.
And Dr. Botwinick said, "I think I can save these feet. I'm going to go a little slowly and I'm going to get it fixed."
Surgeons worked for hours, slowly, meticulously reconstructing her lower torso, her legs, her feet.
As I'm operating on her, and I'm looking at her, and I'm saying it's not Jane Doe number 1. It's somebody who's got gorgeous dark curly hair, and she's probably late 20s or 30. You do think about if Dr. Botwinick can put these feet back on, what is she going to do with these feet? And I'm desperate to know who is Jane Doe number 1.
Remarkably, doctors were able to save Jane Doe's feet and legs. But when she came out of surgery, the trauma team still had no idea who this woman was. It wasn't until 8 hours later when, despite having a tube down her throat, she managed to whisper her name and phone number.
And I got her name and telephone number, and I spoke to her fiancé, who answered the phone, and I heard the word fiancé. I said, well, because of Nelson, at her wedding, she will dance on her own feet and not on prostheses.
At home on New York's Upper West Side, Greg St. John had been frantic for hours, unable to find the woman he was to marry a year from this month. And then his phone rang.
I waited about 8 hours through the day until the surgeons called me, and they asked if I would possibly know Jane Doe number 1 for any reason. And I asked if it was Debbie, and they said, yeah, they think she is a Debbie.
Best phone call of your life?
Absolutely.
Okay, this is Debbie.
Hey, Debbie.
Okay.
It turns out Jane Doe number 1 is 30-year-old Debbie Manderfeld from New York City. 4 days after nearly losing her life, Debbie was finally able to breathe on her own and to talk, although her voice was just a whisper.
I understand you're getting married?
Next September.
Next September.
I have an amazing fiancé. He's one of those few special people in life that I know I have found a truly unique and vibrant person.
I'm sure he feels the same way.
I think so too.
Debbie told us that on Tuesday, she'd gone to work early at the American Express office in the World Trade Center.
What I remember is walking onto the subway to the street and looking up and seeing the top of a building and fire, going, oh yeah, that's not true. that can't be true. And then I remember seeing the other tower explode and know that I had to run for my life. And that's all I remember.
Debbie's recovery will be long and slow, but she's off to a start that's nothing short of amazing, thanks to the helping hands of strangers who have now become lifelong friends.
I'm so thrilled and so impressed with the people who have spent time with me. They've changed my life, all for the better. And I love them. I don't want to lose touch whether it hit your job or not. You didn't have to go to this extent.
She's in the ICU the day after this amazing trauma. She's had, at this point, 30 units of blood, the tube between her vocal cords who can't speak, the devastating injury, and the fact that we've changed the shape of her backside and put it back on, missing certain parts. And she's desperate to grab a tablet to write to me, "So Doc, my butt's smaller?" And I said, "My kind of woman."
It's unbelievable to just be able to have her smile at me. And as soon as she opened her eyes and looked at me, she grabbed my hand. I said, "My name is Debbie," and she wouldn't let go of me. So we both started crying. She's gonna live, and we're gonna go to her wedding.
Debbie provided us all with one of the few laughs we've had over these past 5 days, and we wish her the best.